I'm Josh Gonsalves, and this is Meld. It's a podcast where I have in-depth conversations with some of the brightest people in the known universe. My aim here is to spark deep conversations around interesting topics to find the tools, tactics, and philosophies that we can all use in our daily and creative lives. In this episode, I talk with Josh Maldonado. He's currently a virtual reality producer at Secret Location, a Toronto-based virtual reality studio owned by Entertainment One. Josh is a really good friend of mine that I've known since my time at Ryerson University, where we both studied media production, and we talk a little bit about that in this podcast. This is a very long-form conversation where we discuss many different topics, but at the beginning, we kind of discussed Josh's origin story of how he got to the virtual reality industry, how he got started in VR, and we talk about his experience starting a venture-backed VR company called Discovr that he brought from Toronto over to Silicon Valley for a while. We also talk a lot about investing philosophies, our vision of the future of media, remote work, and even politics. It's a packed chat with lots of interesting topics and philosophies that we both share. There's so much that you're bound to get something out of this episode. So without further introduction, let's just get right into it. I'm Josh Gonsalves, and this is My Meld with Josh Maldonado. All right, Josh, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. This is awesome.
My pleasure.
This was so contrived. I'm not going to bullshit my people. This
is like our third time that we've been like, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is hilarious. Yeah. Literally the third time. We were trying another app called Soundtrap. Spotify, you guys own them. Come on, please make it work. It's such a good product when it works.
Oh, really? Spotify owns them?
Yeah, dude, they own it.
That's cool.
They own, I feel like, the whole chain of like music creation to distribution.
That is lovely. That's cool.
So anyways, we were trying that. So you know what? This is official. Josh, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Meld. This is it.
Thank you very much. And as we were saying before, in the last 3 or 4 tries, we always have these great conversations. So it's good. It's a pleasure to finally record something and just have a productive conversation that's actually going to be recorded. So I'm excited.
Yeah, awesome, man. I feel like we should definitely do this more often because like you said before, like we go on like walks. We live like literally 2 minutes away from each other usually. Yeah. And we go for these walks. We talk all the time and we have these really cool conversations. So it's cool for us to, at least for this one, record something that's kind of all encompassing all of our thoughts during this time in our lives in the universe.
100%, dude. Because if you think about it, like we have been on the same tip for... how long has it been now, dude? Since my last year of university, and your second or third year?
Dude, yeah, even before that, because we met, remember, I was in second year and you were in fourth year, and I gave a guest lecture in your digital media class.
I remember that, and everyone was like, who is this young kid who thinks he's hot shit, lecturing us on digital media. But yeah, that's when I'm like, this guy's interesting. And then when I knew that you were interested in VR as well, that's when we started to click, right? Like when I was doing my practicum and you were like kind of, chatting, we started to chat about it then.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like that was like around the time literally of Oculus DK1 days. You got one. Actually, you tell me the story of that. How did you get into VR at that time?
Yeah, actually, my buddy Omar, at that point in time, like it was practicum season, right? And practicum is like the thesis project for fourth year Ryerson students. And, usually what you'll get at RTA stands for radio and television arts, but really it's the name that you get on your degree is media production. So people tend to like create either short films or web series or these types of traditional media. And I had kind of tried to go through this alternative route after hearing about the Oculus Rift. My buddy Omar sent me an article that had talked about how Facebook had acquired this company called Oculus Rift for $2 billion. And really that's what piqued my interest. And so I started, doing a little more research on it. I went to a VR meetup in Toronto and tried VR for the first time. And to be honest, I thought it was fucking terrible. Like I put on this headset, it made me sick and all the graphics were super blurry, but I thought, there's some potential here. And so I went on Kijiji and I searched for Oculus Rift, and there was only one person selling one in buttfuck nowhere, Ontario. and I ended up purchasing it. I ended up driving all the way out there, purchasing it. And I remember like coming back from that place and having the headset in my car and thinking like, this is going to be a significant part of my life in some way. And, lo and behold, I don't know, it's been like 6 years later and I'm still in this industry.
Well, it's crazy. You've had a crazy journey in this industry, more than honestly anyone else that I know in the industry. But first of all, it's crazy to me that you could even get a DK1, again, in the buttfuck nowhere, Ontario, first of all. It's crazy that someone's even selling it, because this must have been maybe as DK2 was coming out, so they're like, whatever, I'll sell it, buy the new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me because I did the pretty much the same thing. Instead of Kijiji, I actually got the DK2 straight from the Oculus website when it was first announced. And I remember the same thing when it got shipped to me. I might, even if you go back on my Instagram, like years ago, I have a post with the DK2, and it came in a cardboard box, like a really shitty brown cardboard box.
Yeah,
and I remember just saying, yeah, it was so bad, but I was like, you know what, this is going to be the future, and I still believe that to this day.
Yeah, and that's amazing because we're both on the same page with that. And so many people are discouraged at this point. Like if you think about the VR industry, if you think about experiences like mine and other people who had VR startups and there was a little bit of hype around it, it's kind of hard to sustain that hope in VR as a medium, as becoming a mass medium. But, you and I have always been on the same page about it. And I think, looking at it 6 years later, we're actually starting to see something of an inflection point in VR adoption through the Oculus Quest. And I think, this thing's going to happen a lot slower than people had originally imagined, but we've always been on the same page that this is going to be some sort of impactful technology.
Yeah, totally. And then going backwards to the practicum, like you had a really cool idea for, I'm not going to butcher. I'm going to let you kind of talk about the idea and kind of where that brought you, because like we're media production students. Most people were doing film. You decided to do VR. That's kind of how we connected. We worked on this project together, and then you had a really crazy journey after that. So I'd rather have you talk about it. I don't want to tell your story, but I think it's important to talk about.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, I'll give you the Coles Notes version, obviously, but when I was in university, as you know, I had this idea. Today it sounds like a very trivial idea, but back then it sounded a little more innovative. I had this idea that we could use VR for sort of edutainment, and I had grown up watching the Magic School Bus, so I thought that was kind of cool. Like, what if you could take people through this journey to learn about something like science? And the idea was based off of this Magic School Bus episode that I saw, where they take, if you've ever seen the Magic School Bus, there's this teacher with with literally a magic school bus that takes you to adventures that educate you in some way. And in one of the episodes, they shrink the Magic School Bus and go through somebody's veins and capillaries to teach you about their circulatory system. So I thought that would be cool. Like, what if you could actually do that? And so that seemed like a good base project to prove the effectiveness of VR in education. So we built this very basic experience where you go through someone's blood vessels to kind of learn about the circulatory system. And that was the practicum project. And so it's crazy. So many people are thinking about VR for education now. And I'm sure they were thinking about it back then, but very few people were making noise because it was the early days. And so, I kind of built that for practicum, and then thought about what would this look like, as a company, as an enterprise. Like, how could we expand this idea of VR for education? Wrote up a little business plan and submitted it to what was then one of the first VR accelerators.
First, for sure.
Yeah, the first VR startup accelerator. Today it's ridiculed in a whole bunch of it's riddled in a whole bunch of controversy. But back then, I think it was pretty innovative. It was definitely very early, but
I still believe so. It was called River Ventures, right?
Yeah, it was called River, and it was by the now defamed venture capitalist Mike Rothenberg, who, as controversial as he has, had some very, very, very good ideas in the early days.
Dude, I believe that wasn't just the Facebook acquisition of Oculus, but I also believe it was that accelerator that also literally accelerated it and got people excited. Because I think without that, I don't think VR as an industry would have got the acceleration that it actually did during this time.
No, totally, man. And then so many people, like I am in my position now because of that accelerator. Like, not to the same degree where I have a successful company or a startup venture, but I'm taking my skills and expertise from what was basically a free MBA course and a free course in VR production, and I'm like and using it effectively in a place where like the marketplace is actually asking for that. Whereas back then, you had your shitty DK2, nobody was really asking for VR. And so it was kind of difficult to make something out of that starting capital.
Yeah, man. Like there was I would say the only consumer product at the time was a Gear VR, which was a Samsung phone that you would snap into a little headset and strap to your face.
Yeah, exactly.
And that thing was that was awesome. The Gear VR, I remember when that first came out, that shit was innovative because it was the first time you could bring VR in a backpack with you and bring it around.
It was cool, man. It was cool. It was definitely like polished mobile VR. But I think, like, to me, even from those days, VR has always been, like, 6 degrees of freedom has always been a requirement for a good virtual reality user experience, right? And I think that that's what the Samsung was missing. It was really a glorified like 360 screen.
Yeah.
And it was cool. Like it was a 10x version from the Google Cardboard, but really it never gave people. I think a lot of people felt disappointed with VR as a technology because that was their first experience with it, and with the Google Cardboard. And I think people like hailed Google Cardboard and Samsung as like this sort of like way to democratize VR for the masses, and really it wasn't like an authentic virtual reality experience.
Yeah, it almost did the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You try the Samsung Gear VR, and then you try the HTC Vive, which coexisted in sort of the same era, and it's just it's different, right?
Yeah, it's not the same thing. But that's what's crazy about the Quest, man. Like you said, there's an inflection point with the Quest. A lot of people are kind of upset. I'm pretty sure all the founders the original founders of Oculus have completely left the company. Last one being Brendan Iribe, whatever you say his last name, because he wanted, because he just wanted PC VR to be a thing. But most consumers don't have these high-powered gaming PCs. They just want basically a console that works, and Quest delivered on that. And honestly, man, I was so surprised when it came out. I thought we're at least another 2-3 years away from that. And when it actually came out, I was actually like shell shocked. I'm like, they actually have this ready. I thought it was just a prototype, but it's out. And now it's doing what people thought the Gear VR and the Google Cardboard would do, which is you let your friends try it and they immediately want to buy it.
It's the dream. It's the dream for VR. And like too few people know that. I feel like so many people are like kind of jaded on VR that they haven't even given it a chance. But I don't think what people recognize a lot of people don't recognize what this means for VR. It's such a great product. I was just playing Beat Saber on it the other night, and it to have 6 degrees of freedom and full like hand track controllers in a mobile form factor that way is the first step to mass adoption, I think. And again, it's going to happen slowly, but I think this is the first real step. Like this is what we've all been hoping for, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it definitely...
real believers.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's it. And I think it'll only get better from there. It'll only get smaller. The screen will get better. The graphics capabilities will get better. Eventually, you'll be able to maybe stream. Because right now, the other thing that blew my mind is like a couple months after it launched, they announced Link, right? Where you can literally just plug in a USB cable.
Incredible.
And it becomes an Oculus Rift, but you don't need any of those, like, set up all these cameras, camera tracking system
it's
all
one
around.
Plug. Boop.
It's one plug.
How annoying it is to set up like trackers and manage all those cables? I hate it.
Exactly.
And so to be able to get PC quality VR with one USB connection is already like a huge step up from what we've had in the past in order to experience like high quality graphics for virtual reality.
Definitely, man. I think now at this point, it's less about people saying, "Oh, the hardware needs to get better and cheaper." No, we have the Quest. Now you have to create good experiences and stuff that people are willing to pay for. So, I mean, what we're seeing right now in the marketplace is like games and maybe a few app experiences, some pretty good creative apps. Like we're seeing Tilt Brush and Gravity Sketch, a few of these really cool things. But what you're working on is purely entertainment now.
Yes. So I'm most interested in that space. I'm most interested in like where the mobile VR space is going, because I think that is where the action is going to be in the next couple of years. But obviously now like to finish off the story of my VR journey. So like I basically went to this VR accelerator. I started a company called Discovr Education, Discover without an E for VR. A lot of people called us Disco VR for a long time, and I hate those people. But yeah, so we did our thing. We did our thing for about 3 years, which is pretty good for like the amount of funding that we got. But obviously, it was too early. Obviously, it was way too ambitious, and so that startup failed. And I could say a million things about the startup experience and what failure is like there. But really, what it did was prepare me to be what I am now, which is a producer of virtual reality content at a actual established company, which is, as you know, it's called Secret Location. And Secret Location is an Entertainment One company, which has now been acquired by Hasbro. So now we're like Secret Location and Entertainment One company, a Hasbro company. We're like a double acquiree, if that's even a word.
That's hilarious. The bigger fish got eaten by an even bigger fish.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting. Like, I didn't even know that this could happen. This is my first time, being a part of a company that has been acquired, and the whole process is interesting. You notice how, like, as a company, you kind of go through an interesting identity crisis a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's been great. Like, so far, I think everyone has positive feelings about it.
Yeah, and like you guys are going through an even crazier identity crisis because quarantine happened, COVID-19 happened. Now you guys are forced to be remote.
Yes, exactly.
So, man, there's a lot of changes going on there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. We just got acquired, and now like COVID happened. So, we're going through an identity crisis, and at the same time, we're trying to figure out like this, these work from home protocols. So there's a lot going on. It's definitely a lot to manage.
Are you allowed to talk about what you're working on now?
I'm not allowed to talk about what I'm working on specifically. And I should also probably say that none of my opinions are the opinions of Secret Location, Hasbro, or Entertainment One. But I am allowed to talk about, I think, like, what I've derived from my experience there. As I was saying earlier, like, because we were talking about what I'm doing now is not mobile VR. My path has kind of taken me I'm a producer for entertainment virtual reality content. And what we're focused on at Secret Location at the moment is location-based virtual reality right now.
Even still after COVID.
Yeah. I think, the thing about our productions obviously is that they're pre-financed. So we're going to stick with them. And I think we're gonna keep working on the things that we've been financed for, and personally, like, not even outside of work, I feel like I'm optimistic about the fact that people are gonna want to get out and do things outside of their homes, and like I think there's gonna be a stigma around doing anything that seems unsanitary, and obviously like putting a headset on your face that other people have worn feels pretty unsanitary, but I do think that there's still going to be a market for it after all this is over. Yeah,
and do you think like the market will shift more towards it? Like you said, people are going to want to go out. They're going to want to hang out with their friends at like the so-called third space. Right now, they talk about like Starbucks and stuff like that. Right now, our third space has been kind of replaced with a Zoom and Messenger and House Party and VR for some people. But I think you're right. People are going to want to go back to that third space very soon. But also, like, we're pretty bullish on location-based entertainment for the fact that most people still don't have headsets. So they're going to be using VR, other people's headsets and other people's gears at these, VR arcades, at conferences, at film festivals, all these things. So that's what we were doing at Controverse. But then I started to think about it more. And I said, well, at least as a company, after all this stuff happened, our business basically just got like decimated over the last couple months. Right. So I had a chance to work on a few other things. So I was thinking to be a resilient business, like, does it make sense to go fully digital and just, distribute on the Quest, on the Rift and the Vive and all that stuff on Steam? I don't know, man. Like, business wise.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, COVID has had an interesting impact on that sort of thing, right? Like, we all hope that we all hoped that location-based VR was going to be a good intermediary between where we're at now and the future that we all hope for, which is like mass adoption among consumers in at-home VR. And I think that's a strategy. That was a strategy for us as well. Like, there's definitely a compelling argument for location-based virtual reality, right? Because the hardware for like a really good VR experience is still too expensive, and is pretty inaccessible. So if you have these places where you instead of investing, $2,000 for a full VR setup, the VR capable PC and the headset and the trackers and the controllers and all that stuff and the software, instead of like investing in all that, if you want a good high quality VR experience, you can just pay $15 to $20 and you can experience some like really incredible VR for like, what is it, 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, right? So that was the argument for LBE. And COVID has obviously, it's not good for that thesis at the moment.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, it's just accelerating at-home based VR.
That's what I'm thinking, right? I think it's just accelerating everything that was inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is cool. Like, I'm all for it, even though we're building at-home experiences. I'm still optimistic that after all of this is over, we'll still have like some location-based VR, especially if the content is compelling, like the things that I, really, really in an unbiased way say we're building at Secret Location. But no, I'm more excited for what's happening in the at-home market, because I think that's where ultimately we want to see growth.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think you're also right about the location-based entertainment still happening, because I think on the second episode, I don't know if you listened to it, but I had the founder of the Arcadia Games on here. So basically what they're doing is creating esports experiences, and it's targeted on Quest, but they're not distributing on the Quest store. What they want to do is have groups of friends come together at like an arena. They have the arena mapped out, and then you can have arena-based games. Like, you can have like 4-on-4, 5-on-5, like basically like full body Call of Duty or like laser tag. And there were a lot of companies doing that. So, I think at that point, it's like people will keep going back because they want to go to that arena. It was like, when I was in high school, I played like semi-professional paintball, not something that most kids play as like a sport. I had a paintball team, and like we had like 5 of us. Like every single Tuesday, we would go to the indoor paintball arena and we would play. And we had our own guns, and we spent like fucking thousands of dollars on our guns and equipment and all this stuff. Yet we kept going back because they had the arena. They had like the space that we didn't have at home. Like, obviously you can be like, with the Quest, you can have like a 8x8 or 10x10 foot space, but like, how many people have that much space, especially if you're living in an apartment in the city? Totally. And like, that's what makes like 6 Degrees of Freedom VR, which means like you can move positionally in any location physically, and that is represented in the virtual world. Like, that's what makes that compelling, right? Like, yeah, you can if you have a 10x10 space and you can paint that reality with any virtual environment, like that's super compelling, I think. And I think that's where the bread and butter is going to be for location VR experiences. Like, most people, like, think about Toronto, man. Like, most people in Toronto live in like 600 square foot condos, right? So yeah, you're talking about like, 10 by 10 feet, 100, just like 100 square feet of whatever you want. 1,000 square feet of whatever you want to be your virtual environment. It's pretty compelling. So yeah, and I'm super excited for that in virtual production. Like, what I've been doing for the last 3 months is I've gone balls deep into Unreal Engine. I'm all in on Unreal. Unity's cool. I worked in Unity. A lot of our Controverse products are in Unity, but I went balls to the wall in Unreal, man, because the level of realism, their virtual production tools is unparalleled. Man, like large productions, like I'm pretty sure Avatar was starting. The new Avatars for sure are being built in Unreal. Like all the previs, all of the productions all done in Unreal. The Last Lion King, so many huge productions that you would never think. Mandalorian, dude. Yeah. And I keep bringing him up, and I know I'm going to get on the podcast, but Matt Workman, I think I showed you him on Instagram, right? But the stuff that he can do with the Unreal Engine and use that for film production, it blows my mind. So bringing this back, like, you and I went to school together at Radio and Television Arts. Hence why this podcast sounds so sexy, guys. And I had a podcast. Deep radio voice. And I had a podcast back in the day. We did Think Tank, and you were on that too. Right. So I'll link the description down to this. You can listen to our first podcast episode together with Think Tank.
Classic.
But just bring it full circle. It's like I kind of want to take virtual reality technologies and bring that into the film production pipeline, which is happening. Like I'm not the only one thinking that way. I think everyone's doing it. And especially now with COVID, most companies are figuring out, wait, we should be working remotely. So how can you now do that with film? Well, Unreal has all of this built in. Like you can have multi-user editing. So literally you can have like 5-10 people in VR in the same virtual set, moving stuff around, moving lights, and you have the director blocking shots. So that is to me, that's the future of filmmaking. And with the Unreal Engine, it's not just previs. The level of detail and quality that you get from the production there, it could be final frame VFX film.
Yes. Totally, man. And I think like this isn't being talked about enough in the media industry. This concept that game engines are going to eat the media industry. Like I feel like that is like a wave that people are not getting on enough. And like you're talking about virtual production, but at all levels, right? Like these are the foundation. These are the tools that make up the foundation of what is now the largest media industry in the world, gaming, right? It's not just the foundation for the largest media, the segment of the largest media industry in the world. It's also going to eat the rest of the segments of media, like you're talking about with virtual production. And I don't know enough about virtual production, but just based off of what you've told me and what we've discussed, it sounds like this stuff is going to spill over. And, companies like Unreal and Unity are going to have a massive foothold across different verticals of specifically film, television, in addition to gaming, which they already do.
100%, man. I think you're the one that introduced me to him, but Matthew Ball on like Twitter. Yeah. Have you been reading his essays on Unreal?
I haven't read all of the essays. I haven't read the Unreal Primer, but I will say to anyone who's interested in digital media, gaming, like if you're a student of media, you need, like, Matthew Ball to me is required reading. I need to go through those essays. He is incredible. His perspective is incredible. He takes into account all aspects, business, the creative aspect of it, the technological aspect of it. I've never heard someone be so succinct about the media industry.
100%, man. You're right. He knows the technicals. He knows the business, financials. I think is he a VC? Is that what he's been doing?
It sounds like he's a VC. He was the head of strategy at Amazon at some point, and at one or two other companies. But I think mostly he focuses on investing.
Okay, I got to get this guy in the podcast. I've been talking to him kind of like offhandedly on Twitter like a few times. I know he's going to actually be in Ontario. Super weird.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And he's gonna be in Ontario soon, so I'm gonna have to try to get him on the podcast.
That's the episode to listen to.
Dude, that's the one. I need to get him and Matt Workman. You guys are on my list. I'm gonna send you this audio clip so you guys know how.
Send them to him, man. Send them. There's another guest on your podcast right now telling you that would be the best guest that you could get on your podcast.
And everyone listening, you'll all fucking love it. So awesome. That will be the next thing. And then I want to bring back Think Tank for this notion. Remember, because there's more of a round table and you have like 5 minds on a single topic. So I really want to bring back Think Tank for that. I really like the format.
Yeah, you don't even have to like change the MindMeld brand even. You can just do that under the MindMeld brand, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, man. Well, honestly, like I just love doing this. Just for again, like the fact that we could just kind of talk and
totally.
Eventually, hopefully, it will allow me to talk to these guys like Matthew Ball. Because if I was like, hey guys, want to come on a Zoom call for me for an hour so I can pick your brain, they're gonna be like, fuck you. But if I'm like, hey, I have these specific questions, it's gonna be on a podcast. You can plug whatever the fuck you want to plug. Let's go for it.
Yeah, totally. I know, dude. I sit like when we were in the office, I sit right next to, like, literally my desk is right next to the CEO of Entertainment One, and I've always wondered like what it would be like to just like sit with him for an hour and like pick his brain. So maybe one of these days it'll be like a Mind Meld episode with me as a host and Darren as like the interviewee, if you're cool with that, because like I've always wanted to be like wanted an excuse to be like, this dude's a baller, man. Like, this is like one of the biggest ballers in Canadian media, right? Like, he started this as a record label when he was younger, and then he grew it to be this incredible entertainment distribution company, and now he has the foresight to pivot into a content company because he knows its content is first. He acquired the company that owns Peppa Pig, and now he's doing all these incredible things. Now his company, Entertainment One, has been acquired by Hasbro, so he's like doing all these cool things. So I'd be interesting to pick his mind and see how he's been able to navigate like these different levels of like growth in his own company.
Man, 100% do it. I'll ship him a microphone. You keep that one, and we will do it, man. 100%. That'll be awesome.
Okay.
That's another person I would love to talk to too, but I think you should definitely do a guest host and 100% talk to him. That'd be awesome. And like E1 has like a low key sort of monopoly on some media distribution in Canada. Like they're balling, like you said, because Canadian media, is like, it's compared to American media, like we have some great stuff. Don't get me wrong. We have some great Canadian filmmakers, they all go to America and they all go to Hollywood to create the stuff. The music is great here too, but again, it's not like it is in America. It's just, America is just like their behemoth of a culture engine. And that's what we talked about last time. Man. I really want to get back into that because I was feeling really down about, my place in VR, what I was doing over the last couple of weeks. And then you kind of like brought me back to reality. Like, man, like what we're doing is something like really valuable because we're literally influencing culture and society through our work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was two separate instances that made me feel validated in my media career. And the first one was when I got an internship at Zoomer Media, a paid internship at Zoomer Media, the worst like channel in the world, not just Canada. It's like the whole premise is like media for boomers, which like it's funny because I talked to someone who worked at that company who was a boomer, and he's like, why would I watch this? Why would I watch something that makes me feel old? But nonetheless, it doesn't take away from the fact that its founder is Moses Znaimer, who is like one of the guys who pioneered a television format in Canada. Like, he's a media legend in Canada. He's the guy who founded City TV. He's the guy who founded Much Music,
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. Big figure, and he's an egotistical like boss dude, Canadian media mogul, and like the Zoomer Media is kind of like his like, I'm just having fun at this point. But anyways, one of the things I when I was in university, I wrote him an email because like I remember hearing about him and thinking, this dude is like, he's a game changer. Like, he's someone who like really changed the game for Canadian media. And so I wanted to email him, and I thought he's never going to reply. It turns out his assistant emails me back, and he's like, Moses would like to meet with you. So that's how I got my first internship, is like meeting directly with the CEO, the guy who like started City TV and the guy who started Much Music. And I think the most important piece of advice that he gave me when I asked him to was have something to say, because a lot of people want to say something, but they don't have something to say. And I think that is so important when you're working in media, because like you have access to like, this essentially this megaphone of culture. And I think to really make a good use of it, you need to know what it is that you want to project. So that was the first moment in my life where I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing here is important. And then the other time was actually very recently, like a year ago, I was on a plane to LA, and the person who happened to sit next to me for whatever reason started talking me up, and it turns out that he is a movie director, producer who has worked on films with like the likes of Cuba Gooding Jr. and some other like A to B list celebrities, and yeah, one of the most important things that he said was media is important because it has the power to shape thought. Like if you look at it that way, it is a bit of a transcendental calling, not to get too apocryphal with it, but
I want to, man. That's in almost every episode I try to lead my guests there, because that's exactly like you said in the first thing. It's like, if you don't have, people want to have something to say, and people do have something to say. They just need someone else to let them know that they can feel comfortable saying it. I don't know how comfortable with again, I can cut stuff out of the podcast, this last line, this line, and all this metaphysical shit right now. I can cut out. But if you're comfortable with talking about like sort of some of the psychedelics or like that kind of stuff, because getting into that
I'm so comfortable. I'm so comfortable with that stuff. Totally.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that, man. It is kind of getting that transcendental sort of area with media, because that's the thought I have with VR, especially. That was the thing that kind of like pulled me towards it. Is around the time that I was really getting interested with psychedelics too, and there was definitely this sort of cross pollination between VR and psychedelics. And I know a lot of people in the VR industry are also very into the psychedelic culture, but nonetheless, I just want to let you know that that's exactly it. Media has the power to shape thought, and I just want to be here for my megaphone is to give you a safe space to say whatever you're thinking, so we can get as metaphysical as, religious even as you want, because I know you're a man of God, so
totally, whatever that means to you.
Exactly.
100%, man. And I appreciate that you're like creating a safe space for that, because it's so hard to talk about it this day and age, like, not necessarily religion, but just like we were talking about the transcendental aspect of living. For so many people, life is just picking up hobbies while you wait to die.
Exactly.
Like, to put it in the most nihilistic and morbid terms, and maybe they're right. I don't know. I've never been able to look at life that way. I've to me, it's always been, I've always felt compelled the same way you do to, continue to improve myself with the goal in mind to, one, be free, and two, improve the lives of others. Like, if I can reach my full potential, then I have the ability to help others reach their full potential, or to help other people. And that's what has always been, more or less the end goal.
That's definitely, and I think that is literally what transcendence is, right? It's like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You get your food and shelter, and then you have like love and compassion, and then at the very, very top, you have self-actualization, and that's what they're saying. But I think there's something even beyond that. Self-actualization is the top, but there's something transcendent about something above them, which is exactly like you said. It's now helping others. It's, my brother always likes to say, once you ride the elevator up, you always send the elevator back down.
That's cool.
Yeah,
totally.
And that always stuck with me. It's a really easy thing to kind of remember. It's like, I
love that.
I love it too. And that's what this podcast again is all about. It's like, again, this could have been a hobby. We could have been talking about Kanye West, stupid bullshit. We could have even just been talking about news. Like, hey, coronavirus happened and Black Lives Matter, which they obviously do. But we have something else to say. There's other things out there, something beyond what's immediately in your view.
I agree. And that, like, having that bird's eye macro level understanding of what matters is actually what helps you navigate these other issues a little bit better, right?
Exactly.
Like I feel like people get a little too stressed out about what's happening in the world today. And really, if you have this bird's eye view, and you have a long-term plan for things, and you have this sort of these sort of transcendental ideals, then it helps you deal with everything a little bit better.
Yeah, I can't agree more, man. That's exactly it. Because like you said, there's always going to be something. The market's always going to crash. There's always going to be a next pandemic. Something happened. There's always going to be news. And that's
in every generation, in every lifetime, we've seen the thing. Like, people don't know that, but we've seen the things that we're seeing today. We've seen riots, we've seen protests, we've seen economic depressions, we've seen economic inflations and deflations. And the truth is that at the end of the day, the human race has always come out ahead in some way. And I feel like that is what people lose sight of. People also lose sight of the fact that we are by nature both good and evil. Like, we have a duality in our nature. And I think a lot of people live like, and I'm going a little off topic here, because I've been thinking about this a lot with everything that's happening lately. There's no way to justify what's happening. It's tragic. It's unfortunate. And I'm happy that people are talking about it, and we are making positive changes towards it. But the truth is that the world is full of injustice, and it always has been, because human nature is just as evil as it is good. I think the interesting thing that I'm seeing is, like, looking at all these people who have grown up with cushy lives, summers in the cottage, and like good family values. are now waking up to the fact that there's a world outside of that. And like one of the things that I'm grateful for as a minority is like my parents are born in Guatemala. My dad was basically raised in a mud hut in Guatemala. Is being able to go there at a very early age and see that the world is not what it is in Canada. Like we're extremely blessed in the Western world. We're extremely blessed and privileged in Canada with all the things that we have. We are, looking at all the injustice in the Western world, and I'm so happy that we're having conversations about it and thinking about it. But that exists everywhere in the world, and I think we need to be a little bit more stoic about the way we approach these things, and also at the same time work towards improving the condition of mankind humankind in every way that we can.
Yeah, and like we said, like that was sort of my mindset was like, fuck, like I'm just making VR, I'm just making media, I'm just doing this podcast. What can I do to help? And then that's where we had that conversation. You lifted me back up. It's like, no, well, we have our role, and that's literally what we're doing. And whether it's something small like the podcast or some bigger ideas I have for like larger productions, it's like taking those value. And we talked about it's like, what is the either entertainment, educational, or like value? What is the value? Like, what is the moral of the story? Because, throughout this whole quarantine, people were watching Netflix, they were playing games, and you had this choice to either just go on TikTok and watch random shit, which obviously I did. I had my fair share of that.
Totally.
You could just watch bullshit on Netflix, or you can watch like hardcore documentaries or like even films, even like honestly, even fantastical films. They always say fiction is stranger than the truth. The truth is stranger than fiction. I did that wrong.
The truth is stranger than fiction, yeah.
And it totally is. And it's like some of the values that you get from fiction, whether it's like in a Disney or a Pixar or even just like, I don't know, like any other kind of movie that you would see, there's always like these little tidbits in it, right? That like we are shaped by it. Like our culture is shaped by it. Our minds are literally shaped by it. And we were raised more by television than our own parents. And that's just the truth.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And I think, there's something interesting to be said there about the message that these things are conveying. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Like when you're, and it's not all, it's not like people aren't allowed to have fun and just like consume media for purely entertainment purposes. But like every now and then to mix it up with something that's a little bit more edifying, whether that's, something like a documentary or like you said, some fiction that has a deeper meaning if you look for it. I think that's important every now and then especially if you're like the type of person like you or I.
Yeah, it's so true because like I think like most of my media consumption is like reading articles. I read a lot of books, like full-on novels. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So yes, I mean that's the type of media I mainly consume. So there's nothing wrong with watching, a little bit of dumbed down, not even dumbed down television, but like just like television series.
Yeah, totally.
And even then they have morals. They have like these lessons,
hidden messages. And I think that's the thing. Like not everyone is like I'm the same way, man. I feel like if I'm not reading a nonfiction book, as painful as it may be, if I'm not watching a documentary, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Like I get anxiety about it. Like I need to be, but not everybody is like that, right? Like I have a lot of friends who, they just want to kick back and watch something entertaining, something funny, something, an action or an adventure movie. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's where we come in as media creators, as producers. I think like we were talking about the other day is how can we instill our values in something that is a good piece of media, in something that is good storytelling. Like what would the Fast and the Furious that includes electric cars look like? Like it sounds super ridiculous at the moment, but like, one of our values is that we want to see more renewable energy sources in the future. Like, the environmental conditions improve in the future. Like, how do we influence that through media? And I think like that's one of the roles that we have to like think about. Yeah,
totally. And the other thing too is like imagine the world without some of this media, like without escapism. Like then you would just be bombarded 24/7 about the news and stuff that's going on with social media, and it would just be too grounded in reality, and you wouldn't have that human creativity. Because I think it's like again, with film too, it's moving pictures, right? It's art. It is like, I mean, people aren't going to see this, can be audio only, but there's a frame right here, and that's art, and it's usually in a frame, but you can have it moving, you can make it beautiful, and you can have these, a lot of these films have massive art departments with amazing artists working on like single frames, and it is art. It is like we're consuming art in a different way than we were before because we have new technologies, and now with VR, you could just go inside of that art, which is incredible.
Right. And that's what a lot of people don't get is the importance of immersion in this medium. It's almost like difficult to communicate until you experience it.
Yeah, it totally is, man. Like there's times where yes, I can get immersed in a regular video game or in a movie, and there are times where yes, the frame dissolves, and I definitely get totally immersed.
Engulfed.
You're totally engulfed in it.
We talked about 1917, like it's just like you're in it,
Dude, and we watched that in IMAX, and I told you like we have to go to this exact spot because this is like the dead center, and we were totally engulfed by that film. Yeah, and it was very much like a virtual reality like experience watching that film. It was amazing. And then you're right,
and that's why content matters more than anything.
Totally, man. It's all about the content. It's all about really good content and having amazing artists come together. And yes, it's industrialized now, but that's just the way everything is. But then getting back to what you're saying with renewable energy, I was also thinking this would be a really good segment into this because there's two ways we can influence. One is with our creativity and our powers as media creators and our talents. The second way you can influence anything is with your money. And, over the last couple months, I know you've put quite a bit of money into the stock markets. You spend a lot of time learning that. And I would love to hear sort of like your thesis and your values around that, because that's exactly how we can influence the world as well.
I appreciate that you brought that up because like these days, like I've like, especially after the whole startup thing, I've been known as a VR guy. And to be honest, I hate that label. Like VR is something that I do, but and it's like a way that I spend my time, and it's a way I make my living, but that's not a part of my, like I wouldn't consider that a part of my identity at all. Whereas investing is really interesting lately. Like I don't think people think about investing the right way. Like it's putting money on whatever your vision of the future is, if you think about it the right way. And that is really my, like that's my philosophy around investing, is like putting bets on what your vision of the future is and who can execute that future the best way possible, And that's why the companies I'm invested in are companies that I genuinely think are doing good and positive work, and that are going to be able to execute on the same visions that I have, that have the facilities that I don't to execute those visions of the future.
That's a good way to think about it, man. Because I think, I don't know, I just have this like weird, like futuristic vision. I know you'll probably do some kind of like private equity investing or some kind of VC stuff. And we were talking about you thought that I'd be probably good at it too, because I have a lot of foresight into a lot of these things. So I think maybe I'll just record this now so we have it timestamped for the future. We will probably run a multi-billion-dollar equity firm or some kind of VC firm where we invest in the right future.
Totally. And I think if you look at the best investors right now, one of the favorite people that I would recommend anybody follow is this guy named Chamath Palihapitiya. And he has an incredible, like you just hear him talk and you're like, yep, that makes sense. It's a good, positive, optimistic version of the future that is also rational, because I think that's important. I think a good investor is optimistic, rational, and not egocentric, very stoic. I think though, like if you listen to any of the great investors, they always talk about the idea of how investing is more about psychology than any sort of intellect. People who hear about investing think it's about knowing the numbers and knowing the math, and it's really not about that as much as it is about your investment philosophy and your psychological disposition towards where you put your money.
I can't agree more, man. Especially after reading Principles by Ray Dalio. Highly recommend that book. It's all about mostly psychology. He talks about it mostly psychology, and like I'm sure he has like technicals and stuff. I mean, they're writing like AI software to work in the market, but there's other things where it's mainly, you're right, it's mainly a lot of it is spectacle. It's sorry, not spectacle, but speculative. Because literally, it's like you said, it is speculative because we're taking bets on what we think the future is going to be like. Nobody knows what the future is going to be like.
Yeah.
We only know that hindsight is 2020. You can look back in the markets and be like, oh, well, it did that in 2008, so it's going to happen now. No, like it's nothing. The market doesn't have to do anything. It will do what it does. And I think even now, especially with the public markets, it's so like complicated that no one could really understand, because now you have democratized tools like Robinhood and Wealthsimple Trade. And what I've been seeing, man, this fucking blew my mind. We talked about the other day, that company Nikola that went public last Thursday. So here's the fucking story, man. How I even heard about that company. I remember seeing like the Badger, like their truck, their pickup truck, like years ago when they had like a prototype for it. But then it came back to me through fucking TikTok on my TikTok For You page.
No way, dude. That's fucking hilarious.
Dude, and it had 2 million likes, which means it probably had like 10 million views, right? And that was on the Friday. That was on Friday, last Friday. And it went public on Thursday, and this guy made this TikTok on it on the Friday. On the Monday, it fucking blew up. It went from $30 to $90 a share, and it became almost as valuable as General Motors, and it didn't even produce a single car.
Unbelievable. That is unbelievable, dude. That's one of the ways that the stock market is just so fucking weird and wild and interesting, that a company that hasn't even produced a single car can be worth more than a legacy automaker like General Motors. What the fuck, dude? It's crazy.
I think it's crazy that it can even be listed on the public stock market, to be honest.
Totally.
That's weird to me. That's fucking backwards to me.
Yeah, and I have mixed feelings about Nikola in general.
Oh, definitely. But you know what? I think it was good for the industry.
It shows that like a sexy electric vehicle is something that the public is willing to invest in. There's this great quote that says like the stock market is a voting machine in the short run, but a weighing machine in the long run. And the truth is that the stock market is voting for sexy electric vehicles. Like Tesla is the first one, but it's very clear that there is demand.
There will be more.
Yeah.
And totally. Then, these other legacy companies, once they start going all electric, people will reinvest into them. Again, if you're making progress, if you're going towards a future that everybody actually wants, that we know is good for everyone, you will get the votes, which is money. People vote with their money. And, totally. I've always, that's a saying that people say, vote with your money. And they say that through, like buying stuff. Like, okay, if you don't like this company because they hurt the environment, don't buy their stuff. But also with stock, right? Mm-hmm. So, but man, that's so true with Tesla. I think, again, in the long term, Tesla obviously is overvalued right now. I don't really want to put too much on the podcast that like dates it to what it is, but as of right now, it's about $1,000 a share. Elon Musk just tweeted stonks, and he has like he
tweeted LOL at the stock market, which is like making news in financial. It's making like headlines in financial news. Yeah, which is like, God bless Elon Musk. He's so funny. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and he knows like his audience too. He knows that like the people who are kind of behind him, they're all into like meme culture and stuff like that. Yeah, he bought the website domain Stank Memes or something, and
I didn't know that. And that's such an Elon thing to do.
Yeah, dude, he's amazing, and that's why like you love what he's doing, because he clearly wants to do stuff for the environment, and he's going to do it in a great way that's capitalistic, because he's going to make a fuck ton of money. He's a smart guy, and I know and I think he even tweeted he was the first to put his money into Tesla. He'll be the last to take his money out. And it's
love
people
that guy.
It's people like that.
God bless him.
Exactly. I don't care what he does. You're like, I want to invest in that, because he is one of those people, one of those entrepreneurs in our generation that only comes around once in a generation.
Totally. And I think like the significance of Elon Musk as an icon, as a symbol and an icon, is so important, because he's exposing what a lot of people don't get about capitalism. And that is that you can work within this system to get your way. I think like when I talk to a lot of my friends about capitalism, they cringe and they're like, capitalism, like what
it's a dirty
system.
Word. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When like in reality, if you really look at the history of humanity, capitalism is a system that has accelerated on average from a utilitarian standpoint, a better livelihood for all mankind. It's lifted billions and millions and billions out of poverty. It's the system that has worked best for us. And what Elon Musk has done is said like, okay, there's a problem here that usually people who would want to solve this problem are going to try to solve by protesting or like writing legislation or going the public route. And he's saying like, no, I'm going to build a business around it and work within the system to build a company that's going to accomplish those same things. So I love that, you know, like what I think about constantly is how we could continue to do that same thing. How can we build successful companies, you know, that excel within the capitalist system, but also advance humankind, are also good for everybody and are also good for the future.
I can't agree more, man. Like I don't think a lot of people know this. We might have talked about it, but even with Jeff Bezos, what this guy is doing, I don't think people really understand what he has done. And he's literally stated it. I'll try to link it in this description or something, like an article. But he literally said something along the lines of like, yeah, I won the Amazon lottery and I'm taking that money from my lottery winnings and putting that into a space company, Blue Origin. So he gamed the system. He literally, man, this guy fucking reverse engineered like his vision. Like his vision was like from a very early age, from what I know, is to, you know, will be same thing as Elon Musk. We're going to be interplanetary beings, which makes sense. Again, he had this awakening. Wait, this planet isn't just like, it's not just like a fixed game where like we only have one level. There's another level to this shit. Like these guys think on literally a different level than most of us do. And then what he did is he figured out with the internet, I think, again, I'll link the video because I probably saw it on Instagram or TikTok, somewhere on the internet, definitely on YouTube. In like the 90s, like when he first started Amazon, he's like, well, what I did was I just looked at the system, the internet, and I thought, what would be a business model that makes sense for that system, which was selling books, because you can easily distribute it, right? And now what he's done with Amazon is literally everything you could ever fucking possibly imagine. And I mean, they're a monopoly. Let's not be stupid, right? They're literally a goddamn monopoly. And that's actually one of the companies I really regret not investing in as soon as quarantine hit, because it makes so much sense. People want things cheaper, faster. Oh, and you're at home, so you need things delivered to you. Boom, Amazon fucking Prime. Dude, like, again, hindsight's 2020, but at least I can take these lessons that I learned over the last couple months and now apply it to the future, because that's not going to be our only opportunity. There'll be plenty of opportunities.
Absolutely not. Yeah, no, exactly. But like two interesting points from what you said there is, one, like these guys have 100-year vision of the future, and we don't have enough of that like type of long-term thinking. You know, right now, like let's look at what's happening right now in the world, right? There's a huge backlash against racism and, you know, against systemic racism and against all the things that are happening. And I think that's incredible. But how many people are taking a long-term approach to fixing that? You know, when you have 100-year time horizon, you just have a better sense of how you can approach these things, you know, and you can be a little more strategic, and your strategy is almost always more effective. And that is the type of thinking that I think we need. But we're so conditioned in this world to think about, you know, the next moment, the next quarter. You think about the public company model is like, how can we show our best face for these 3 months, you know, for the next quarterly report? How can we create the best political campaign to appeal to people, you know, in only the next 4 years? And you know, China's done a great job at this as a country, and some of our best business leaders like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have done a great job. Bob Iger of Disney have done a great job of like thinking 10 to 20 to 100 years into the future. And I think that's what's missing from leadership is that long-term thinking is really important, and we're really devoid of in the Western world.
Man, I can't agree more. And it's like, there's two parts to that. It's like having that vision. Like, I think anyone can eventually teach themselves to do that, right? But here comes the hard part, is convincing other people. This is one of the reasons why I love Nikola. He convinced so many people on this idea, on a fucking idea of these battery. I think there's hydrogen vehicles or something. Yeah. Not even battery electric of these vehicles. And you just sold investors on hundreds of millions of dollars. And now you're convincing the public in your idea on this long-term vision. So like, that's the next thing. Like, how do you convince people here's where it comes down to storytelling again. You know, you have to be a good storyteller to create media, but it doesn't just have to be in fictional storytelling. It doesn't have to be in movies, games, TV. Storytelling exists across the board in business. And I think if you can tell a good story, that's what business is. Because again, Tesla's telling a story. They're telling us a story over and over again. And I think if we can take that vision and put that into whatever business or whatever it is, I think that's the key. It's more storytelling than anything.
I agree. I think, and you're totally right. The storytelling aspect of building a company or building an enterprise, and again, like to separate an enterprise from like, you know, that like nitty gritty business numbers, like an enterprise trying to accomplish something that also works in the marketplace. The storytelling aspect of that is so undervalued. There's this great professor named Aswath Damodaran, and he's like considered like a guru of valuation. And one of the things that he talks about is that there are really two ways to value a company. One is quantitatively and one is qualitatively. Quantitatively, you're looking at things like, you know, the quarterly financials, cash flow, like these sort of, you know, assets, liabilities, all those financial metrics that you'll find on either the balance sheet, cash flow statement, or income statement. But there's also a qualitative aspect. Like, I feel like some people are out there are just like purely, to get back to the investing side of things, are purely good investors because they understand the storytelling aspect of things. One of my earliest investments that has turned out really good for me was Shopify. You know, like Tobias Lutke telling the story of how there's going to be this niche market in e-commerce for people who want their own voice and their own brand, and, you know, just kind of want to white label the technology. And I think like understanding the storytelling and the qualitative aspect of evaluating a company is so underrated.
Totally, man. And that's why it comes down to having as many different perspectives on something as possible. That's why you see like larger teams obviously do really well, because they have people who obviously can crunch the numbers and they can tell you if, like, you know, you're being bullshitted by a good story. Or it's the other way. It's like, you know, these numbers aren't saying much now, but I know in the future this will be the truth. It's almost like uncovering the truth, right? It's like unlocking some part of reality. I think Tim Ferriss talks about that. It's like, you know, uncovering the veil, making a little slit in the veil so you can see the light come through, and that's what it kind of is.
Yeah, seeing what's really under there, like not defined by the numbers based on today's metrics.
Yeah, and I think like people are waiting for that. People want something that's going to like fundamentally like just change reality. And that's what it is. It's like, you know, the iPhone fucking changed reality. Because I had this, again, we were talking about this earlier, but it's like when I took, I think it was the first time I ever took mushrooms. I had my iPhone with me, and I was at a conservation, not a conservation area, at a greenhouse. What's the one near Ryerson again?
Jarvis Garden or Allen Gardens?
Yeah, so I was at Allen Gardens for the first time on mushrooms, and I had my iPhone. It was like the iPhone 4, like way back then.
Wow.
But I just remember, this is before Spotify. This is before Apple Music. I just had iTunes, and I had all my music loaded up that I had bought, and, you know, discs that I'd burned and whatever. And I had all my music in my library. And I was like tripping balls in here. Like by this point, all the leaves around me started breathing, and I'm like, I'm in a different world. I'm on a different planet right now. And this was like during a Canadian winter, so outside is fucking just snowing, crazy. But inside it was subtropical. I remember taking my jacket off. I put in like my old Apple earbuds, the wired ones, and I put my music on, and I just put it on shuffle. And the next song that played, I can't really remember what it was. I think it was a song by like Sam Roberts. I started like crying because I had this weird holding the iPhone and having that music be fed to me through there. I understood the universe. I basically felt everything from the Big Bang all the way up to what led to that music being produced, the iPhone being created, me purchasing it, getting it in my pocket, loading up the music, going to Allen Gardens, and then listening to the music, and I really just felt like one with the universe. And I've never felt that same kind of experience with my Samsung phone.
That's funny. Yeah.
I didn't even mean to do a punchline there, but it's so true.
I mean, that's hilarious.
But it's so true, because now I am thinking, okay, back in my Samsung makes great stuff, and they make a lot more stuff than Apple, but there's something niche and very specific.
There's something about the iPhone, you know. People are always you've always had people complaining about the limited, you know, functionality and freedom of what you can do, but there's just something about the Apple user experience that I can't encapsulate. You can
only feel it.
Why is it sexy? Why is it so appealing to like the average consumer?
And you know what it is? It's design. And that's, I think, the next part. And this is also why I think Tesla is doing really well because Elon Musk knows three things really well. And maybe this might be a basis for a good thesis on business, but it's a triangle with 3 points, and it's business, technology, and design. And if you can nail those three things, I think that is the killer triple threat.
Yep.
If you know business, technology, and design,
yep,
that's it. So I'm slowly trying to figure out those three things simultaneously all the time. That's sort of my thesis on life and business.
I mean, I agree 100%, man. And like my time in San Francisco, like kind of to me validated that design is so much more important than people give you credit for. Most people think of like graphic design or visual design when they think about design, but design is really about putting all the pieces together in a way that works best for the end user.
Exactly.
And like I think that's more well understood now, obviously. Like you have product designer, product managers are like a pretty like commonly sought after role these days. But I think it's very early in the days for design. You know, I think like moving forward, business and technology, I think everybody understands that those two are valuable pillars of any enterprise. Design is just sort of starting to come up, and you're absolutely right. Like having that at the forefront is extremely important in any business, in any endeavor.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Like it's only now happening. I told you when I had my first internship after RTA, and it was at a VC firm. There's at Gibraltar.
Right.
And
Gibraltar.
And this was the first time that I'll say that design got me to the table. And I'm going to say it in that way because you'll understand what I'm saying by it brought me to the table, which was, you know, I was the designer there. I was creating their website. I was doing some other graphic design. I was doing I was helping them with some technology stuff too, but mainly design. But because I was interning there and it was such a small firm, they let me sit at the table for every single investor pitch from these founders that would come in. So these founders would come in, they'd pitch. I would just be sitting there writing notes. I was a fly on the wall. I was watching, you know, some of the investors there, you know, give them feedback. So I was kind of like writing notes on both sides, and it was really valuable. And I was like, wow, like, it's crazy that design got me to the table. Like more than anything, it's like finding the strength, right? Finding that that thing that you do really well. And then the other two things, like for me, technology, yeah, it's getting a little better. I'm no coder. I'm not an electrical engineer by any means, but I understand it really well. And then of course, business, I'm just learning as I go. Like those are things that you learn over time.
Totally. And I think when you like holding all of those three pillars at the same simultaneously is very difficult. Nobody does all of them at 100%. If you think of technology, business, and design as like kind of min-max stats, you know, like when you have your Sims, or you have like your soccer player, your custom soccer player in FIFA, like those are min-max stats. Nobody has them all. Like it's very rare to find someone who has them all at 100. Like they're very rare. You have like an Elon, a Steve, a Jeff who do, but very rarely do people have those three things at 100. And I think like people who have them all at like 20 or 50 out of 100, those are product managers, those are producers, those are like founders and entrepreneurs. And I feel like that's where you and I have found ourselves at. Like we are not necessarily masters of any of those three things, but the ability to understand all of those things at a certain level gives us the ability to put pieces together. And that's where I found my niche. Like I'm a producer today because I have a capped understanding of each of those three disciplines of business. I have a capped understanding of technology, and I have a capped understanding of design, and I'm able to hold all those three. We're able to hold all those three perspectives simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you do? Do you do anything to try to like boost any one of those three? Like, are you like, hey, this is my strength, I'm going to go to it? Or are you like, hey, I'm kind of lagging here, I want to like really boost that stat up?
I am perpetually trying to improve those stats, but I think my stat is there's a fourth ghost option, which is the ability to coordinate those things, you know? And that's really where I'm trying to focus is optimizing the ability to coordinate those three things, because I think that's extremely important for a lot of people. Like if you think of a game production, for example, you have your devs, you have your artists and designers, you have your audio guys, and a lot of those guys, in order to be effective at what they do, they almost have to work in a skill vacuum. Like they have to focus on what they're doing. with an even less with an even more limited perspective of what the other disciplines are doing. So that's why producers are valuable. That's why product managers are valuable, because in any product, you need someone who has just the right amount of knowledge in all of these disciplines to be able to coordinate them effectively. And that's the value add of a producer or a product manager.
Man, that is beautiful, because I've been trying to find a mental model or a way to kind of think about it. I think you just nailed it, because I was thinking, everyone's trying to say you have to do one thing, you have to niche down, you have to just do one thing. It's like, yeah, if you want to be just an audio producer, but I'm like, you know what? I would feel like my talents are wasted if I did just one,
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like there are people who do just want to be audio producers, and to be honest, man, I bow down to those people. I bow down to the people who are just 3D artists. Like I bow down to the people who are just programmers, who have mastered that skill, because they are the creators. They are the ones who are really putting in like the effort and the substance to make this thing what it is. But that's not me. That's not my personality. That's not your personality. Like, we are people who like to hold these different perspectives. Our abilities are a little more are more distributed, and there's a place for that too. And I think like maybe I've always thought that maybe I'll never have the same amount of creative fulfillment as someone like a professional 3D modeler or like a genius programmer. My fulfillment comes in being able to understand all those perspectives and the ability to coordinate them.
Man, yeah, that's so true. It's like almost being the conductor, it's literally that. And that's what Steve Jobs said, right? They're like, well, like what do you do? Like, this guy's a great engineer. You're not a designer. You're nothing. He's like, well, these guys, they all play their instruments. What I do is I tell them how to play their instruments so it works well with all the instruments. I'm the conductor. And you always need a conductor. You need someone with that vision that knows just enough of everything to bring everyone forward. And then you bring that storytelling to move everyone forward so they're all on the same page. Here's what we're doing. And that's what I've been trying to focus on over the last year at Controverse. And it worked out really well. We had like a lot of interns and new hires over the last year that said, wow, I've never had an experience like this at a company, because we knew our mission and we knew our values so well. And we had this onboarding meeting with all of our interns and all of our new hires. And we just took them through the company of what the vision is, what is the mission, what is our values. And they're like, yeah, no one's ever done that before. Because usually she's like, yeah, come on in. Here's the coffee machine. And here's how we do it. Come in at 8 and leave at 9. Like, what? That makes no sense. That was 1 hour, but
yeah. No one's laying the backbone. No one's laying the backbone for the body of what you're doing. And again, I want to be careful. I think the Steve Jobs, sort of the idea of Steve Jobs is he definitely fell in that category of a person who was a coordinator. But I think in this day and age, it's important to recognize that we as product managers, as producers, as coordinators, we are really in service to the creatives. Like it's an upside down triangle where really these are the people who are contributing the substance in this at the studio at Secret Location. I feel like even though I'm coordinating the project, I'm really I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm servicing all the creatives. I'm servicing the artists. I'm servicing the programmers. I'm servicing, the audio guys and the designers. They are really the ones who are creating this, and I'm in service to them. And I feel like that's an important perspective to bring these days, because too many founders are very egotistical, and they're I'm the authoritarian, I'm the totalitarian, and they try to
here's my vision.
Silicon Valley, here's my vision. You subscribe to it and do exactly what I want. And I just don't think that's the way.
That's so true. Have you seen Mythic Quest? Do you have Apple TV Plus, or have you seen Mythic Quest?
I have not seen it.
Oh my fucking God, Josh. You need to watch it with your roommate, because you two will die. It's literally, It's The Office, but at a video game development office.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
It is literally and it's from the guys who created It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So it's fucking hilarious. It is the best, and it's the smartest and funniest show I've ever seen in my life. And again, Apple TV, I didn't think they put out good stuff, but that just showed me they're doing everything, the whole spectrum really well. But man, it's literally so true. Watch that show. Anyone watching, listen to this, watch that show, and that's literally what you describe. It's I'm the creative director, do as I say. And he has a line in it. He's like, it's kind of like what I said about being the conductor. He's like, it's like, I'm the artist and you're my paintbrush. You do what I say. It's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
But it's
totally.
like, dude, I've exactly had the exact same philosophy as you, is going the opposite way and doing that sort of the mental model of the upside down triangle. Man, my interns over the last couple months, they were mind blown because I would go get them coffee. Literally, I was like, I'm in service to you guys. Like, you guys, yes, it's an unpaid internship because like you're still in school, a lot of them, and you know we're startup. We're not going to pay all of our interns at this point. And you know, I knew that they were putting in really good work. So I'm like, I'm in service to you guys. You guys are moving this mission forward. It has nothing to do with me. You're moving the mission forward, the company. You guys are doing amazing work. Let me get you coffee. Let me go buy you stuff. Let me go set stuff up for you. It's not like, hey, can you go get me coffee? Like, no one owes you shit. No one ever owes you shit.
No, exactly. And that's, I mean, a video game production in the same way is very much like a venture startup. You know, you have your budget, you have your team, and you're working towards something. And really, like, I think the thing that a lot of founders and producers miss is to remove their ego completely from the process, because really what should matter is what's best for the production. And the thing is, it's really difficult to do that. Even myself as a producer, and I noticed like I have a great director that I work under. And like for both of us, it's always a challenge to just be like, okay, what is really what's best for the production, and keeping that in mind. And a lot of the times, you're not the person who knows that. A lot of the times, it's your team members who know that. And I think keeping that in perspective is extremely important. Is that, you know, you have this baby production company, whatever it is, startup. What is really best for the baby, not what's best for you, you know, not what's going to make you feel like you're in charge. And like, you have to completely detach yourself from it and invest your self-interest in the entity, not yourself or your feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, that is so key. It's like, no, it's very hard. It's a very hard thing to do. It's actually a skill.
Dude, it's difficult.
It's honestly difficult. You have to practice it. You really
have to be a stoic 100%, you know, because when you're in that dynamic, man, there are so many times where I'm like, you know, just like the tone of voice that someone speaks to me, it's like, excuse me, you know, it's just like you get into these things when you're trying to build something together, tensions get high. And I think that's why it's so important to practice things like mindfulness and like watching your like being very, very self-aware of your emotional reactions. And, you know, you wouldn't think that these things would help you in business. You wouldn't think that these things help you in production, but they really do.
So do you think that comes from like sort of like leadership? Like if the leadership has a certain set of values and a certain philosophy, do you think that bleeds into everyone else?
I think so.
Or do you think it's like some of the, I mean, I've always had this where as soon as we have a bad apple, someone that you can tell that doesn't jive with company culture, you got to fucking remove them like they're cancer. Because it is a cancer and it spreads.
Absolutely. And I you know, I have had those exact same experiences as you've had, like where people like kind of sneak their way into the position.
They fake their way in.
Yeah, exactly. They fake their way in, and you realize later on that they're just not a good culture fit. And what I love about our studio is that both like our entire leadership team is on board with the idea that culture is so important, and if anyone is going to contaminate that, they need to be cut immediately. And I think like, you know, that yeah, like you said, like this, the way that you've done it in your startup, at your startup, you need to remove that immediately. Yeah.
Do they do anything at Secret Location where they kind of spread company culture? Like is meditation, some of these other things like part of the culture, or is it something that you would bring to the table and you would try to spread to other people?
I'll say that's definitely, Secret Location is an extremely lighthearted place, and I would say that, you know, people are not as intense as you or I in like on like ideas around self-development and meditation and like, you know, like progress. I mean, some people are, but it's not what really is part of our company culture. I think I would say are two things that define our company culture. Is one, be a good person and be good at what you do. Those are the only two things that matter. Have integrity and be skilled at what you do. If you're a good person but you're not very skilled, you're probably not going to make it very far at SL, Secret Location. If you're really good at what you do and you're a shitty person and you don't have integrity, you're not going to make it far either. Our whole company culture, which I think is I'm completely in shock of, is be a good person. And that means like, you know, be friendly to your colleagues, be fun, you know, have integrity, but also be very skilled. And that's what I love about SL, and what keeps me around is that culture. In fact, I think that's probably one of the best things about the company is that we focus so much on culture through events, through just like there's a lot of like social stuff at SL that kind of keeps that vibe going.
Man, I've noticed that too. How have they kept that going throughout quarantine with remote work?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little more difficult, but because everybody has those pre-established relationships, like at the studio, everyone is like a big family. It always has been, right? Since I joined, it's like I feel like I fit in there immediately from like weeks of working there, and so they like to hire people that way. It's like, you know, you're a good fit. It's not like you have to do a lot of relationship building because you already gel with people. And so we've kind of been able to maintain that even throughout the quarantine. It just feels like I'm talking to my friends on these remote platforms, you know?
That's sick, because you guys started using Discord, right?
Yeah. Everyone's on Zoom, but we're on Discord.
Oh, so you guys do all your video calls and everything. They just introduced group video calls too recently, didn't they?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we were doing some Zoom. There are different. The thing about SL is it's really funny, man. Like everyone has always said at Entertainment One that Secret Location likes to do things their own way. Like we take up the 8th floor, and the 8th floor of the Entertainment One building looks so different from you've been. Like, I think I've taken you through.
I've been through there plenty of times.
It looks so different from any of the other floors at Entertainment One, right? Every other floor of Entertainment One is like cubicles, you know, like typical office. You go to the 8th floor and it's like dartboards, whiteboards with scribbling on them, like open areas, you know, just like toys and like action figures and posters everywhere.
Lots of VR,
obviously. And it's just like this it's almost, I love that about Darren Throop, our CEO, is that he lets us do what we want our own way. And it's funny, like whenever you talk to someone at E1, their whole thought about Secret Locations, like, yeah, they do things their own way. Like the whole company uses Outlook and we use Gmail and Slack. The whole company uses Yammer. We don't. Like it's you know, the whole company is right now communicating through Microsoft Teams. We're communicating through Discord. So that's always been cool.
That's so true, because it totally, like, I was talking about this on another podcast, like the tools that you use to chat sets a mindset. Like Microsoft Teams is one thing. It feels very corporate-y business, but like Discord is something you would probably also have other channels, because there are a lot of gamers, obviously, at Secret Location. You're going to have other Discord servers for the other stuff you talk about. Dude, for like anything.
On the money. Like even before that, our Slack channels have always had like coffee club, you know, like we have so many coffee enthusiasts at Secret Location. We have a video games channel. Like that's why it feels like, you know, like you know, a place where you can have sub communities and like, you know, kind of build relationships based off of similar interests. But you're totally right. Like that's why Discord was the perfect iteration of a work from home culture for us.
Yeah, totally, man. And have you guys, well, have you heard anything about them wanting to continue? Because I know a lot of big tech companies, a lot of these companies, they want to go remote because they're seeing the cost savings and they're just seeing performance actually increase. Have you guys had that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, no one knows for sure what's going to happen at the moment. Like, obviously, we're working from home from the foreseeable future, but there's been talk about like we should mix it up a little bit. Like, have you know, this is from senior leadership. Like, we should mix it up. We should have a mix of work from home and work from the office. So I don't know for sure. Like, no one has said this, and it's not set in stone. But I imagine that moving forward, working from home will be more acceptable. Yeah,
I think that is definitely the way of the future. I mean, I've been actually hybrid for the last couple of years, and we went fully remote, obviously, during COVID. But we found that having that hybrid model of like, hey, if you need to have a team meeting and everyone needs to be there, do that on your Monday, set the tone for the week. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, fucking work from home, work from a coffee shop. We talked about this. Like, hopefully things start opening up so we can work from coffee shops together. And it's like we can cross-pollinate and get ideas. Like, that would be so cool, you know? I think that's the future. Like, if you want to work from home, you'll be more productive.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree 100%. Like, when I was at that Accelerator, we had a co-working space. And, you know, for all the flack that WeWork has rightfully gotten, the one thing that they did get right was the idea of like all these people from different disciplines working in the same space together. Like I could get ideas and perspectives from you that I would not otherwise get in, this homogenized workplace focused on one thing. And totally, I mean, I would love that, dude. If when like things reopen again, like you and I go to Pilot Coffee Roaster, and like I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing, and every now and then we pop out of our, work zone and kind of like talk about what we're working on and get different perspectives on things. I think we both agree that would be, mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and I want to see more employers understand how beneficial that is too. I mean, I get it if you're working on something super secretive. Maybe don't allow that, or like, obviously that's why NDAs exist, and, let people understand that it is very important for something to be kept secret. But then if it's just other generic stuff.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily, like you and I have had a 2-hour conversation, a 1 hour and a half, whatever conversation at this point, and I haven't divulged any of the details of what we're working on specifically, but we've had a productive conversation about both of our careers and both of what we're doing at the same time. I think it's going to be, like you look at Jack Dorsey, he said Twitter is now a work from home company. Square, his other company, is work from home. Shopify here in Canada has announced that it is now a work from home company. Facebook has announced, like, these big players.
Facebook shocked me because we've been there. You and I had a trip down there. We've been to the Facebook town, the new headquarters, and it's literally
the little village.
Town. They have a village, man. But here's what they probably realized: wait, we could be way more profitable if we don't have to sustain a fucking village.
Of course.
Make everyone pay for their own electricity, bitches.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many ways that as a corporation they benefit. And like some people vilify that a little bit, like, these corporations are just looking to decrease their margins, which, it's probably true, but really it's a win-win for a lot of it's a win-win for a lot of people.
Fourth win for the environment.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
And like if I want to live in Barrie and work at a place that's headquartered in the city, or I want to, you know what I mean? Like it's just totally. Like you have like the freedom of mobility, which I think is extremely important. What that is going to do in the long run is it's going to flatten out wages, obviously, because now you're competing with someone in Latvia who is probably 1/2 of the price of your salary in the labor market. And eventually, obviously, like that's gonna do some damage to, I think, wages. But we'll see if how it all works out. But in net, I think it's a net positive change.
Net positive, which is why I'm definitely bullish on remote work and remote work technologies. I think a few things other than VR are going to be massive. That's going to be 1, remote work and remote work tech and solutions, and 2, no code tools, man, because we just talked about, triple threat business technology design. If you're a great designer and you know some business, you can pick up some no code tools like Webflow or like Bubble, and even technically Unreal Engine is no code with blueprints. That's why I'm learning it. And I think I can nail all 3. And Unreal Engine was the first time, with Unity, I kind of bashed my head with C# and stuff like that. But with blueprints, what I can see myself doing is fucking unparalleled. I talked about Matt Workman. He's a triple threat. He built Cinetracer himself, and it's a fucking amazing tool. It is something that you would think a massive team is behind, but one guy can do it. So that's why I think, with the remote work and no code tools, you'll have these founders who can come up with solutions that no other people could ever implement before. And now you can find really cheap help all around the world through Upwork or Fiverr. So I think it's it's going to be a game changer that I've seen happening from the last 5 years. And I thought it had been happening, but I guess the big wave has only just begun. Like it's just beginning to start now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you've always been a big advocate of the no code movement. I obviously agree with it because we're both design oriented, but I think like even for, I think programming is not going away.
No, someone needs to build those tools.
Yeah, version control software is another one of those things that is gonna blow up. Things like GitHub and Plastic, and like, right now we're using Plastic remotely, and that's helping us all like be able to focus on the same project from different workstations. So, no, you're totally right, man. I think the big picture here is that like remote work is no longer going to be stigmatized, even in the eyes of like more traditional corporations.
Definitely. And then you'll have VR to create that sort of third space in the virtual office.
Yeah, I think that's coming a little later, but I agree. I agree that that's the long-term future.
Yeah, it's crazy because like Facebook and Oculus, they're working on this hardcore. In the last conference, the Oculus Connect conference, they were talking a lot about remote work, and I've been seeing a lot on Twitter of some of their devs releasing stuff. So I know that they're working on these tools now, and then their company is using those tools to basically pilot test it. And if Facebook becomes your literal office, I think that would be huge.
Yeah. No, I think it's a little lofty for now, to be honest. Like I can't spend more than like, we're talking about 8-hour work days. I can't spend more than half an hour in VR. And that's someone who's like, someone who's an advocate for VR. So,
well, I could see us jumping in for half an hour, getting onto a whiteboard session, doing something more spatially, then hopping off, talking on Discord or Zoom, and then going back into VR. And I think there'll be like hybrid models where like you'll use it for that specific thing. Like I don't use my iPad and Apple Pencil for every single thing, but I use it when it's necessary.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a different format for a different occasion. And I think you're right. There will be like occasions where it's better to hop in VR and chat. And I think it'll be the more accessible those mediums are. Like the smaller the format of a VR headset gets, and the more affordable it is, the more likely you are to see like that as a remote working collaboration tool.
Definitely. And so just before we wrap up too, because it's getting pretty late, what do you see as sort of the biggest opportunity in the next 5-10 years? We don't have to get to the 100 because 100 is really hard to really predict at this point because there's a lot of shit converging. But in the next 5 to 10 years, what do you see as either the most like a really big opportunity or something that you're really excited about that you would love to contribute to?
Damn, man, you hit me with the hard one for sure. I mean, there's so many for me. Like I'm always thinking of, like we both talk about that the author that you mentioned about the future, Peter Diamandis, right? Like we had in the last couple of decades, we had a very linear progression between technologies. Like we had enterprise computing, and then like the birth of the personal computer, and then the internet. And now we're having like the convergence of all these technologies, artificial intelligence, modern GPUs, big data. It's just like all these different things are converging. So it's hard to say how it's all going to go. But there are a couple different places that I'm interested. I think e-commerce is still early. When you think about what Amazon is doing, like fundamentally, human consumerism is unconstrained. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in both e-commerce, and that has implications in digital payment. And I don't want to say like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency specifically, but I think like if you think about companies like MasterCard and Visa, electronic payment really is only prevalent in certain parts of the world. And as we continue to build out digital infrastructure in other parts of the world, I think there are going to be opportunities for both e-commerce and for digital payment infrastructure. So I think that's one big one. I think obviously AR and VR are going to be huge. And one thing that I'm really excited about that I think is very controversial is the automation of like low effort jobs. I think that's very interesting. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about how automation is this thing that people are saying like automation is going to take away a whole bunch of jobs. It's going to be devastating for the economy. And the truth is that it may be, unless we approach it the right way from a policy perspective. Like one thing that I'm interested to see is how we approach the loss of jobs from automation. And there are a lot of people that are arguing that universal basic income coupled with automation might be the way of the future, right? Because machines, despite the fact that they increase GDP, they don't demand anything themselves. So you have all this excess gross domestic product. Where is it going to go? I think one of the opportunities is to build out a political infrastructure for UBI. And the very last thing, I know I'm like going overboard on this question, but the very last thing is not actually a business opportunity. One thing that I've been thinking a lot lately is how polarized the world is lately politically. There's the left and the right. And for a long time, the power dynamic has forced us to either invest psychologically in left or right politics instead of good or bad politics. And I think what I'm seeing now in our generation is that we are able to distill a good idea from an idea rooted in some sort of political ideology. And I think that is going to be one of the greatest things maybe not of the next 5 years, but of the next 10 to 15 years. And I think we're going to be seeing it as early as the 2024 US election, is people are no longer going to be rooted in a particular political ideology. The left and the right are going to realize that they're both fighting essentially for the same thing. And we're going to start to see, hopefully, this is a very optimistic point of view, we're going to start to see people voting on good ideas instead of either left or right ideas.
That is a really, really solid prediction and a really good vision, because I think all those things, obviously, I totally agree with, but you hit me hard with the political one at the end there. And I'm really glad that you did, because that is so true. That we're seeing so much. And I think you're right. It's people who are Republican or whatever, even liberal, NDP, whatever the hell,
manipulated.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in that bucket. Don't see yourself as that type. I don't see myself as a liberal. It's the political thing is something separate for me, and I'm going to vote for which one I think is right. It's not who I am. You can't say I am this, because it's not who you are.
Exactly.
That's how they divide you, and that's how they say, hey, you're with us or you're not. It's like, no, I want to vote for the party that is going to be the best for the nation. So I think we got to end it on that, because that was super powerful. I'm really glad that you brought it up, and that will just open us up for part 2 for sure.
Yeah, man.
We'll have to do this a lot more. I think one of the things I'd love to do more is have, the same guest on, where I don't want to see it as a guest. I don't want to be like an Oprah or even a Joe Rogan. It's like, even Joe Rogan has sort of these recurring people on, and because we have so many good ideas together, the more times we can do this, the better, because just more ideas will keep coming up.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface. So whenever, man, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, that was awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Totally. Thanks, man. Have a good one.